Now, because we know that things are tight because of coronavirus, because there's a few attacks on the budget happening in different areas, ministers have apparently been told, find ways to cut spending to make sure that if we have a deficit, it is not a particularly deep deficit. Eliza Redwoods with more of the story from Canberra.
First, a bushfire crisis, and now a global health emergency, putting strain on the domestic economy. Treasury predicting the bushfires will wipe 0.2% of GDP growth in the March quarter, on top of coronavirus detracting at least 0.5% from growth in the first 3 months of 2020. The total of 0.7%, accounting for a dive in foreign students and tourists banned from entering the country. With the economy now all but guaranteed to contract in the March quarter, there are fears the negative growth could run into the second quarter of the year. But Treasury talking down the prospect a recession will be triggered.
Oh, how the media and Labor is cheering that on, because, as we've told you, they just want the black eye put on Team Blue that Team Red has had to wear since its recession back in the 1990s. All right, so I've got a question for you tonight. What would you cut from the federal budget? Where would you find some spending? Nicholas, let's start with you. Where do we trim the sails of the Australian spending budget?
Well, I know you've often argued, Paul, for changes to negative gearing, fifth, sixth, seventh properties that people are able to buy.
Sure.
I think probably this would be the time to make that sort of change to the budget, and it would be a sensible move and would actually make the budget more sustainable long term. So that's one starting point. Other things, some of those superannuation tax breaks, I think, are extremely generous as well, and they might get a haircut. But look, I'd start with a negative gearing one, because I know you and I agree on that.
Nicholas,
Campbell, where would you trim some sails here, mate?
Firstly, I've got to respond to Nicholas. That's typical. That is typical, I'm
and
afraid.
Paul Murray, Paul Murray on this one.
No, hang on. No,
Nicholas.
That's just typical, not only of people from the Labor Party, but also, sadly, Liberals these days, like the former MP Kelly O'Dwyer, who talk about tax increases as savings measures, it's nonsense. Those are tax increases you're proposing. Look, the place I'd go for some real wasteful expenditure is the Department of Defence. And it tends to be a sacred cow, but there's money hidden in hollow logs everywhere.
Yeah, you thought you had balls,
and I'm
Nicholas.
Former ADF. Yeah.
So, contrarian from Queensland.
But the more important point. But the more important thing, though, for the Morrison government is to be very careful about public servants serving up the poison bombs, the supposed saving measures which are politically explosive. So be careful.
Well, and of course, and then somehow these things leak, then you have to deny, and then you still get hit with as if you were trying to take those things on. Bronwyn, where do you get that red pen out?
Paris Agreement.
She's got 10
1.
fingers, let's go.
2, get rid of the submarine contracts. 3, the ABC. 4, foreign aid. 5, quangos. Those little organisations that grow up like mushrooms, unknown about.
Not the Human Rights Commission, Bronwyn.
They're the ones who are making decisions that should be taken by ministers and ministers held responsible for, rather than...
save the HRC, Bronwyn.
Absolutely not. I can think of lots of them, like green energy banks and a whole range of them. All gone.
But we don't need subsidies for green energy, Bronwyn. Come on, fair dinkum.
I've got...
Go on,
Nicholas. And I forgot. Subsidies.
Subsidies.
Subsidies for so-called renewables.
Okay, go on, Nicholas.
Hang on. I mean, Bronwyn's just running through the neocon hate list there, isn't she? Oh,
what did you just do?
You just did the Labor Party predictable
list. She's running through the neocon hate list, ABC, quangos, human rights, all very
Nicholas, how many times have you heard me start with the Paris Agreement every night?
Yeah, Paris Agreement, sorry, I forgot about that one. All there on the hate list. Problem is, Bronwyn, I don't think you've kept up with the neocon speaking notes because, of course, Tony Abbott's most
anybody else's notes but mine, thank you, Nicholas.
Budget cut
Unlike you and your socialist little list.
Everyone remembers those savage cuts to foreign aid back in the 2014 horror
There's
Abbott
room
budget.
for more.
But in the years since then, the Liberals, the neocons, have actually worked out the errors of their ways because, of course, as Australia pulled back its foreign aid support, particularly in our region, of course, China and other powers have stepped in, and now Australia's having to actually increase its foreign aid budget as part of maintaining influence.
Nicholas, you haven't
So
been
hang on.
paying
So expansionist China is Tony Abbott's fault. Is that the new one?
That's not a bad point, actually, Nicholas.
So at least keep up with some of these things.
You haven't been paying attention.
Campbell, you don't think that expansionist China is Tony Abbott's fault?
No, I don't, but I think Nicholas makes a point that we certainly, for whatever reason, maybe it was budget cuts, but we certainly cede a lot of ground in our immediate
Absolutely.
sort of island nations to our north.
If I might say, neither of you have been paying attention. I said right a long time ago that by getting out of the Paris Agreement, we would free up funds which could far more usefully be deployed in our own region, looking after Australia's own interests.